well, it was 2019. I was lucky enough to go to Harvard Business School for a week. And there's 99 people invited onto this course, and it's essentially leading professional services firms. So it's how do you lead a professional services firm? And so it's very relevant to this podcast. And half the week was strategy, so your head, how you think. But the other half of the week, which is probably the bit that's the most in need of development for many leaders, is with how do you connect with people? How do you bring people with you? So that was the heart, and I saw some grown men and women cry in this particular auditorium. That's how deep they got into you. But at the end of the course, they said, "Look, where do you want to go with your business? Do you want to stay small, which is fine, profitable, nimble, and everything else, or do you want to go big?" All right, but whichever one you choose, if you choose the small one, stay where you are. But if you want the big one, you have to go through what they call the Bermuda Triangle, because not many people make it out. And it's like 10 or 15 years of hard work. But at the end, you can have a really valuable business that you can sell for lots of money, and you'll be the man. And of course, after a week with all these people who were amazing, I was like, the ego was firing. I was like, that's me. So I went back and I leased a bigger office space, and I was like, I'm going to conquer Australia. And then at some point over the next sort of 12 months, I just realized that was not in line with who I am. I didn't want to spend the next 10 or 15 years doing that. I didn't. And so I closed up the office and retrenched, and I said, no. I said, get your ego out of the way. What do you want to do? Well, what you want to do is run a nice, profitable business where you have a life, and not bet on something in the future. I know plenty of people that live to work, but I'm not one of them. So I said no to that, and that was quite a pivotal decision. But I can see how so many people get sucked into bigger is better, and it's not always better.
All right, welcome everybody back to the Sean Trace Show. I am your host, Sean Trace, and I have an awesome guest with me today. Would you like to tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Sure. My name is Ben Cochrane. I'm based in New Zealand, originally from England. I'm a lifelong marketer. Worked in corporates for many years, and then about 20 years ago, started up on my own. I have an agency over here that has worked with some of the biggest brands in the world, such as Jack Daniels, Kraft Heinz, people like that. And we're trying to make marketing a bit better. I bumped into you on LinkedIn just before Christmas.
That's awesome. Yeah, we did, and I like meeting people that are doing interesting things and have an interesting angle. And for me, I think the world is such a special, beautiful place, and there's so many great stories to be heard and to be shared. And I haven't had anyone on from New Zealand yet, and that was another thing too. I was like,
Okay.
this is pretty cool. Yeah, I was like, how are you not? But one of the things to me is like in every part of the world, there's this creativity. I live in Vietnam right now, split my time between Vietnam and California, and whenever I see. Last night I was working with one of my clients in the US, and they were asking, oh yeah, well, let your team take this creative lead on this thing. And I was just like, you do understand there's a bit of a difference between these markets, but I mean, we'll do what we do, and it will be fun. Like my editors are going to be like, oh, we can do whatever we want. And they're going to be like, like little anime things popping up, and they're going to come to me like, hey, hang on, this is what we were thinking. So it's like, there's always flavor to marketing. And I love that,
Yeah.
But I want to ask you a question. You worked in international marketing and built this big agency. Like, when you think about where you are now and you start looking back, you've had to lead teams, and you've led teams through adversity, led teams through good times. What shaped your views of what good leadership actually looks like?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. I think there's quite a few things.
Start the day with something big, right?
Quite a few things. I've seen a lot of different styles of leadership, and I think one of the most important things in leadership, and it'll probably be a theme throughout the talk, is investing in people. And as time's gone on and everything's become easier and quicker, and we see it with AI shortcuts and everything's urgent. The investment in people, I really feel, has dropped off. And I don't mean sending them on a training course of a whole bunch of people from another company in 2 months' time and ticking a box. I mean actually coaching them and taking the time to get to know them.
Yeah.
Um, and that has been something I tried to do, largely because when I started back in London, I had a couple of really good bosses. And that's what they did to me. So I would be in a meeting with a boss. He'd drag me in. It's not a meeting I should have been in because I wasn't senior enough, but he did it for me. And we'd do the meeting and I wouldn't say much. And then afterwards, he'd drag me aside straight away and he'd say, right, let me just tell you what's happened. This is why I said this. This is why I did that. And it was like, oh, I just didn't see that at all, and accelerated my learning. And then I had another boss we were working for a big FTSE 100 financial services company, big campaign coming out at the agency. And of course, they said, well, the advertising agency presented the campaign and I'm the most junior person in the room. And they said, Ben, what do you think? And of course, I floundered a bit and I commented on some element of the advertising. As soon as we got back to the office, he pulled me in a meeting room. He said, right, let me just deconstruct what happened there. Let me give you some feedback. and he taught me how to actually appraise a strategic idea, talk about a campaign in a proper way. And it's something I've remembered ever since. Not many people get that anymore.
Yeah.
And I can see they don't because I'm presenting to them now and they, they don't seem to know that. So, I think the number one thing, and I see all sorts of different clients from that end of the spectrum through to people who are just busy. And I don't know, that's not leadership to me. That's just getting stuff done without really sitting back and thinking about it.
I love that. And, I think that one of the things that I try to be a better leader for my team because I didn't have those great leaders. I was the person trying to patch up. And we had one of the core experiences for me about leadership was I played on a sports team, a volleyball team, and we had a horrible coach. And he was like a guy who was I played volleyball and he was a basketball guy. He had coached basketball his whole life. And the school was like, we're going to save some money. And we don't have a great volleyball coach. This guy coached basketball. It's another sport, but he's a good coach. Good coach. And he came in and he tried to like tell everyone how to play. And he was doing these drills that like, dude, he knew nothing about the sport. And what was interesting, he was a nice guy. He was a really good guy. But we didn't have a leader. And so what happened with the team is the team had to sit there and be like, we don't want to lose everything. We do not want to have a season that is just an absolute waste while we figure this out. So everyone started taking a bit of initiative. And one of the guys on the team kind of stepped up as the assistant coach. Even though he was a player, he stepped into that role a bit. And, our best practices were after practice finished and when we started doing some extra drills on our own. And it was interesting because and that assistant coach became kind of the leader, but yet everyone had to lead a little bit and to step up in that power vacuum and to create this team because we wanted to succeed and we were invested and had ownership in it.
Um,
And it was interesting to me because now as I've gotten into my teams and moved along into, a more professional space, I want to make sure there's a couple things that my teams are feeling. And one of the things that I find I love investing in people, but I also want to make sure that my team feels safe, because there were many work experiences I had where I did not feel safe. And that just it doesn't boost productivity or help morale.
yeah, no, not at all. That's a big part of it. As a leader, your job isn't to come up with all the answers or
Yeah.
that's the worst thing you can do. It's to create an environment where people feel supported and safe and that they can say things. So here's another view on it is that I see lots of different cultures in organizations that I work with.
Yeah.
And And I think there's one particular culture which I have an issue with, and that's the nice culture, right? So that's
Interesting.
the one where no one wants to get anyone else offside. It's actually a really nice place to work, but from an advertising marketing point of view, it's where ideas go to die, because
Yeah.
they take
Right.
the idea and then they'll run it through everybody in the company. Everybody has, the accounting team have an opinion of it. By the way, the accounting team don't run the numbers past the marketing team before they sign off the accounts, but the marketing team do. And because it's nice, no one feels like they can take a risk. Um,
Yeah.
and it all gets dumbed down to the average or the lowest common denominator. And that really is the death of a high performing team. Yeah, you want people to feel like they can have an opinion. But the other way, you don't want it to be so competitive that if someone has an opinion, they get shot down. So you
Yeah.
have to have a culture of respect, but the right to respectfully disagree.
Hmm.
That's the challenge, I think.
I think that's super spot on. I worked with one client once. I worked with them with years later, and it was this interesting difference. There was a school that I did videos for, and I did videos for them a long time ago, and then I did videos for them recently. A long time ago, there was uh, a people pleaser person that was the head of the school, and when we finished a video, he literally asked every single person in like a leadership role to give feedback on it. And you know what happened? We got one of 10 videos approved over a year. And like it was the slowest thing I've ever seen. And in a place where, quick is important. Then finally, um, I still got paid because it was a year-long contract and they were paying for the videos, but they didn't use them, and it was their wasted money, They are like, "Well, we can't get things done inside the year, so we're just gonna run with one of these." And I was like, "You guys paid all that money for one video because you were trying to make everyone happy." Years later, my friend became the president of the school, and he says, "Sean, do what you think is the best." And we ran with it, and the impact on their organization was huge. Absolutely huge. And, that change was dramatic and it was powerful. So, one of the things that's interesting to me is like when you say that culture is so important. For anybody who's lived in different countries, you can see the impact culture has on your life, Um, so within a company, cultures are super, super powerful, but it's something that I don't think we talk about enough, you know?
No, we don't, and it can be an empty conversation as well if it's just a lip service thing. You want people to want to come to work, and I look. I know that if you won the lottery, you probably wouldn't come to work. But I know,
Right.
let's just say places of work where people are so unhappy that the turnover is so high. I'll see a person in that role every 6 months, and as a
Yeah.
leader, that's incredibly stressful because you're having to train up new people. You don't have a camaraderie. You lose that sense of this is what we do here, which is, the brain like shortcut. So I don't want to be asking questions every time. What do I do? What do I do? Most people have worked for me between 5 and 10 years, and that's the team has stayed together and all the way through
Yeah.
COVID and everything. And it just makes it so much easier because we don't need to ask. We just know how to operate. And
Yeah.
you just need to keep the plate spinning at that point, as opposed to constantly having to jump in and fix problems, which is exhausting.
I agree. Now, let me ask you this: in higher pressure environments, which a lot of marketing agencies are, with loud opinions, fast moving decisions, how do you create clarity of thinking for yourself and for your team?
Yeah. Um, well, I talked about encouraging opinions, which I think is a big one. There's nowhere noisier than an advertising agency on full steam ahead. I can tell you that. And everything, it's very fast paced. Like you get used to it in such a way that when you pull yourself out of it, there's a dopamine hit missing.
Yep.
Um, So, how do you deal with that? One of the things you have to do is use humor a lot, because a lot of the communication in the a lot of a lot of the tension is perceived tension, and
Yeah.
it's about releasing that valve. We are in the mental health space in
Hmm.
our industry, in the service industry, in the professional service industry. The biggest risk is mental health.
Yeah.
And I talk about creating an environment. I'll tell you a couple of things that we do. So Monday is all about, first of all, let's talk about working from home. As soon as COVID came back, I got the team back together. Yes, you can have
Yeah.
working from home time and it's very flexible and that thing, but there's no working from home 3 days a week or anything like that. Everyone's in on a Monday. That's the time we all come together to sort out the week and share um, what the priorities are. And Friday as well. And that's not because I want people running off at the weekend. It's because come early Friday afternoon, and I've done this for almost 20 years. We come together outside the office. We either go for lunch, go for a drink. Doesn't have to be an alcoholic drink, but we go out, we sit round, and we have a therapy session. So we talk. We don't call it a therapy session, but we we talk about the good things that have happened, the bad things that have happened, who's behaved well, who's not behaved well in our ecosystem. And we have a laugh about it. And I think that's really important because what that does is rather than people just dribble out the office on a Friday and take that home to their families, and we all collectively feel like we're part of a thing and it is a therapy session, and everyone leaves like really feeling good about things, even if they've had a bad week. They feel like they've been heard and we talk about it, and it's got nothing to do with tasks or emails or meetings. It's just about people and how we're all feeling. So it's little things like that that help. And checking in on people. If I can see someone or see someone, they don't look so good. Often
Yeah.
they're trying to do their best, so they don't have to tell me that something's wrong. Picking it up early. So picking up
Mm.
something's wrong early and going for a walk with them. Just little things like that. This whole systematic corporate, let's catch up once a quarter for a very clear, it's too late. You got to get in there quick.
Yeah. I entirely agree. Um, the other day, I love leading with humor. And, like, my office is probably one of the funniest places I've ever been. We are cracking up constantly because we're dealing with high stakes and we're dealing
Yeah.
with a lot of stress. When we're cranking out, my team, we do about 1,000 videos a month. It is
Wow.
a lot of content that we are doing, and it's a lot of short form content, but still, the team has to be dialed in and they're working. So every time I'm in there to check, like when I go in the office, I'm checking on progress. I'm checking on alignment. I'm checking on, are people getting done what they need to be getting done? But I go over there and I want them to see me come into the room and be a fun, positive thing. So they're not coming,
Yeah.
oh, Mr. Sean's here. And so we'll have a joke. We'll do something. It will always be light in some way, for sure, way, shape, or form. But it also allows them to understand that there's a switch that gets flipped. Like when I am in serious mode, they also understand, like, oh, hey, he's not joking right now. I need to get this going.
Yeah.
It's level up time. And so it allows me to kind of really set the tone in the office with, like, where are we at? And they can gauge it by how I'm interacting with them. And, I think, granted, everyone that, you ask them if they win the lottery, probably they're going to be like staying home, right? But most of the people that I have, I think, are here by choice, and
Mm.
I think, and I'm not trying to float my boat. I'm just saying, I think that I'm starting to figure it out, and there's a lot more to figure out. Yesterday, I had to navigate a bit of a high stress thing with some clients, and the team was there witnessing this. And I just had to say, breathe easy. We're going to get through this. It's clients needs, there was some scope creep going on and we were trying to navigate scope creep. And I said, it's okay. We'll figure it out. We got
Yeah.
ways to get through it. We've got the tools to get through this and we'll get through it.
Well, I
And
think that's
everyone
really
calmed down.
important because I think there's some parallels between we're both parents, right? Being a parent
Right.
and running a business. And
Yep.
um, one of the biggest things is you can say whatever you want. It's what you do that they
Yeah.
look at and they model. And if every time something goes slightly wrong and you go into hysterics, that kind of filters into everything. People are like, oh my God, he's going to lose it. Whereas if you're calm and relaxed and, you trust the process will be all right, everybody feels much more relaxed. And that's only going to help the situation. So even if you are
Yeah.
screaming inside,
I have to work at that. I have a bad habit of slightly losing my cool, sometimes in traffic, because you got to understand what I put up with in Southeast Asia. Like yesterday, I saw a person smoking while texting and turning and looking down at a busy intersection as they did a left turn, like on a motorcycle. Like there was a cigarette holding a phone while, and the person didn't even look up in the intersection as they're making this turn. And I just was like, deep breaths, deep breaths, deep breaths.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure if these rules apply to road rage.
Uh, right. But one of the things too is like my daughter was with me and she was like, Dad, stay calm. And I was just like, and she's there. And then later on in the day, she's like, how am I with handling my temper? And so I'm sitting there telling her as a kid, like you got to be in control of your temper.
Yeah.
And then I'm in traffic,
Yeah.
watching this person make a left turn, smoking a cigarette while staring at their phone. And I'm just like, whew.
Yeah.
And when it comes to leading a team, like there's no better example of leading a great team than, being a father and having that family culture, So
That's right. That's right. Yeah. If somebody wants to pop off, I say to people, because I've worked in the corporate agencies where the first person that leaves at 6 o'clock at night is noticed. I say, look,
right.
if your kid's got some sort of prize or a play or whatever it is at school, you don't even need to ask. Just go,
Yeah.
because I do.
100%.
So, you know,
I want to ask you this because it plays into the same thing. Um, it right there when you're talking about that, it segues into our next question really well. Um, I had a boss that was like, yeah, if you go home at 6 and late at night, you're like, what are you even doing? Why are you even here? It's like, got a life. But, with growth strategy, you've advised businesses on growth strategy. And, some leaders look at like good decisions, but some people are just busy with drift, and like the reality is like yesterday, I have, these podcasts I'm releasing 7 podcasts a week for between my different podcast platforms. And I love it. And my editor tree that sits right there crushes it. And yesterday, he finished 2 podcasts, all the reels, looked beautiful, sounded beautiful. And he was like, it's 4:30. What would you like me to work on next? I was like, dude, go home. like, like you crushed it today. There's no reason to just be busy at this point in time. I mean, certainly if you want to prep for tomorrow, I respect that. But if you're done, like you did 2 podcasts today and like all of the assets, all of the thumbnails, all of the visuals, like, dude, because for me, it was about, and that's still, I'm still hammering away on growth. Our numbers are going right. We're getting the number, like I'm hitting my targets for like, I don't care about views, but I'm hitting my targets for like numbers of videos going up and for connecting with people. And at that point, but let me go back to you. What separates leaders who focus on good decisions versus busy with drift?
oh, busy. It's such a cultural, stupid, noisy thing. Like when you
Right.
meet somebody, they don't ask how, not that you would anyway, but how effective are you? Or it's like, how are you busy? And like it's a badge of
Right.
honor. And it's like, yeah, I'm really busy. Oh, great. And it's like, what? No. But versus, I came in this morning at 9, made a couple of great decisions, and by 11 o'clock, I called it and went home because, I did more than most people do in 3 days. So,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, back to your point, what would you rather reward? Would you rather reward someone working at their desk for 40 hours a week? And I know a person who runs a marketing team that actually logs their staff in and out of
Yeah.
that. No one's happy, by the way. Um, or would you rather reward someone who's done an excellent job and finished it quickly for you?
Yeah.
So that, and which is what you were doing. You were basically saying you've gone above and beyond, and it's about focusing on the outputs, not the inputs. And I think there's too much lack of trust of people. Probably back to the original thing of people don't invest in people. So they
That's
don't
what I
have
was
the
going to say.
relationship people. So they don't trust them. So they think, well, if I know what you're doing and where you're sitting, you must be producing good output. And that's absolutely, I mean, it's been proven that's just not the case. And it's not the case for us. We know that. I work best in the morning. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm done.
Yeah.
So, why hammer it out till 5, 6 o'clock at night? And then I start resenting it, and I'm not going to do my best work.
I'm with you on that. I think that, you had, like, really, we set the tone with, there's a couple things, first of all, investing in people. Like, that editor, I really invested in him. And I said, what do we need to do to, like, get you and this product to this point? And we worked together, and hand in hand, I sat with him on edit after edit. And I was like, let's listen to this. Let's do this again. I love what
Mm,
you did here. And you know what was awesome? Is that there was this point, and I started having to trust him too. And I was like, he's like, should I do this? And I was like, I don't know. Do you think it would be better? And he's like, I do think it would. And yesterday he was playing one of my podcasts, and I was like, what was that? What was that music? And he's like, well, I thought that you needed an upgrade. And I was like, that's good. That's really, like, something that pop. And I was like, and that tonal shift was something that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have empowered him and invested in him. And so I
yeah,
think that it's such a powerful thing to, like, to think about that, but also, which investing in people plays into the company culture.
that's
And which also plays into this next question, because over the years, there's the ideas of mental models or principles have become part of your personal operating system for making what mental models or principles have become part of your personal operating system for making decisions. I mean, that
well.
sounds fancy too. Like, let me rephrase that. Like, what do you think about when you're making a team decision?
When you're making a team decision, there's a few different ways to answer that. Often people get overwhelmed by what's in front of them.
Yeah.
So sometimes I've had big asks of us, like, create this in a very short space of time. And sometimes people are going, well, I can't do it. I can't do it. There's too much risk involved. Whereas my natural reaction as someone who runs a business is, yes, we can do it. Let's just figure it out on the way down. And so that's a big one. We can. If that quote, if you think you can, you're halfway there, I think is so powerful. And a lot of the things that I've done in my career, I didn't know how I was going to do it at the start. I just said, yeah, yeah. And then kind of figured it out. And getting that culture into the company is important. And then there's a other sort of mindset, which is eat the elephant one bite at a time. So,
Yeah.
sit back and go, like, this just seems way too hard. Where would we start though? Like, what if we could just start? And I think just starting is often a lot of pressure relief because it makes it easy. You're already starting. So one of the other big learnings I've had, if you talk about bringing your sort of personal life into your professional life, is that about 8 years ago, I decided to get fit because I wasn't very fit. I was a bit fat. And I started to go to the gym, and I had a trainer, and it was all foreign to me. And he just said, just turn up. Just turn up
Yeah.
every morning. Just if you don't feel like it, just get to the gym. Just get in the car. Even if you in your mind you don't go upstairs just get in your car. And then when you get here, just put your shoes on and then just walk upstairs. Just do 5 minutes. And then every single time I've done an hour in the gym.
Yeah.
And I think that's because creating habits, it's now a habit. I can't not go to the gym, right? I feel terrible if I haven't, but I don't always want to go. So it's not relying on motivation because motivation wanes, right? Like New Year's
Yeah.
resolutions, they last about a week. It's
Mm-hmm.
about creating repeatable habits and just focus it. He always said to me, Ben, an apple a day, not 7 apples on Sunday. And I
Right.
put that into my job, right? Every day, just do what you don't want to do first. First, get it out of the way and you'll feel better. Because if you put it off, you won't do it. You'll go, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll go to the gym tomorrow. Do what you don't want to do first. It doesn't have to be a huge thing, but over time, it adds up. Don't wait to do one big thing in 2 months' time. So I think, and that's what, you're doing with your content. It's boring, but it's consistently delivering stuff that you don't always want to do, but it's really important. So, that's the side of leadership that and business that people don't often talk about, because we all talk about the shiny new stuff,
Yep.
the latest trend, because that's interesting and exciting. But the reality is, success in business is just delivering consistency, what you said you were going to do.
Yeah. 100%. Everyone likes things that are shiny. And we all want to, like, be at that, "Ooh, I wanna have this. I wanna do that." But people don't realize that if you wanna get there, dude, I wanna be the biggest podcaster in the world with multiple podcasts going and having, and that's easy to say. It's easy to say, but the doing is every like, if you saw my schedule, every night from 10 till midnight and every morning from 7 to 8, I've got a slot booked for the next 4 weeks. And the idea is I just have to show up. And then
Yep.
every day I do outreach on LinkedIn. I sit there and I'm like, I search about topics. I'm like, I want to talk to someone about resilience. So I go and I start searching resilience. And every day I show up and do my research and I start looking at people and seeing some of their posts. And when I see a post that goes, now that's cool. That's like something that I would like to talk to. And then that's the type of the people that I'm messaging. Those are the people I'm reaching out to. And it's not always fun. Like, I have a 4-hour email and outreach like thing every day and it takes time, but it actually is interesting for me. Like, I'm doing it for my daughter's YouTube. We are doing a bit of a pivot on my daughter's YouTube. We started this kids channel and we were doing all this uh, graphics heavy stuff. And suddenly I was like, well, we're really good at podcasting. What if we started doing podcasts for kids? you know? And, because I can't go and, um, I don't have king cobras in my house. Like, actually, I don't say I wish I did. That's not something I wish I did. But I can reach out to a snake expert who has king cobras and he can pop one on to be like, hey guys, take a look. This is Tom. He's a king cobra. And I'm just like, dude, really? You know? But my point being, like, reaching out to that's actually pretty fun. Those are fun
Yeah.
people to reach out to. It's
Yeah.
like, but it takes um leaning in on the habits,
Yeah.
and I like you're saying with the gym, like sometimes the hardest part is getting in the car. You just got
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah. But then one day it'll just be what you do, and you kind of
Yep.
fall in love you fall in love with the process, and
And when
then
you don't do it, it feels like something's missing.
you've let yourself down.
Yeah. Right. Well, can you tell me about a time in your life, in your career? It doesn't have to be in work, but when saying no to an opportunity turned out to be, or I'm going to say this way: saying no or saying yes turned out to be a real defining decision. You know, because I phrased it as a no question, but what about if there was something that you said yes to?
Oh, well, yes, to start my own business was one of the best decisions I ever made, to be honest. Even though at the time I wasn't sure if it was going to work out at all, and I would say it took 8 years of slog, and not. I wasn't sure if I was going to pay the rent, the mortgage, some months. But I kept going. I kept going because I knew I didn't want to go and work for somebody else. I knew that road was closed to me. So the only other answer, and it's closed to me because I didn't see my father had been made redundant after 30 years of service as
Oof.
a CEO of a company, um,
Oof.
because it just didn't make sense for their balance sheet one day. And I thought, I'd do that. That's not going to be me. So
Yeah.
it took 8 years. A hospital visit at 34 years old with heart palpitations because I was so stressed. So I don't think a lot
Yeah.
of people see that side of it. But then finally, it started to work. So that was a yes. I'll tell you about a no decision though, which was many years later. So it was 2019. I was lucky enough to go to Harvard Business School for a week. And there's
Awesome.
99 people invited onto this course, and it's essentially leading professional services firms. So it's how do you lead a professional services firm, and so it's very relevant to this podcast. And half the week was strategy, so your head, how you think, but the other half of the week, which is probably the bit that's the most in need of development for many leaders, is with how do you connect with people? How do you bring
Mm,
people with you? So that was the heart, and I saw some grown men and women cry in
yeah.
this particular auditorium. That's how deep they got into you. But at the end of the course, they said, look, where do you want to go with your business? Do you want to stay small, which is fine, profitable, nimble, and everything else, or do you want to go big? All right, but whichever one you choose, if you choose the small one, stay where you are. But if you want the big one, you have to go through what they call the Bermuda Triangle, because not many people make it out. And it's like
Right.
10 or 15 years of hard work. But at the end,
Yep.
you can have a really valuable business that you can sell for lots of money, and you'll be the man. And of course, after a week with all these people who were amazing, I was like, the ego was firing. I was like, that's me. So I went back and I leased a bigger office space, and I was like, I'm going to conquer Australia. And then at some point over the next sort of 12 months, I just realized that that was not in line with who I am. I didn't want to
I
spend the
love that.
next 10 or 15 years doing that. I didn't. And so I closed up the office and retrenched, and I said, no. I said, get your ego out of the way. What do you want to do? Well, what you want to do is run a nice, profitable business where you have a life and, not bet on something in the future. I know plenty of people that live to work, but I'm not one of them. So I said no to that, and that was quite a pivotal decision. But I can see how so many people get sucked into bigger is better, and it's not
Yeah.
always better.
I I had this conversation recently, and I have a financial podcast called the Growing Money with Sean Trace podcast. And in that podcast, I had this great conversation with a guest about knowing your enough number. If you
Oh yeah,
don't know what is enough for you, and I'm sure you've had this too. A client comes to me and I have a video. We did it for them. I want it to be better. What does that mean? Like,
yeah,
we can do that for you. Like, we can make it better. But what do you mean by make it better? Well, I don't know. I just want it to be more. More what? And so like that, but that we get into that with our own lives, and we hear people telling us, and you see on social media, like all these people that go, today I just finished my travel to 25 different countries in 13 days. And you're like, did you really remember any of those countries? I mean, you're not really there. And like for me and my wife, we decided that we wanted to go deep. And I said this the other day. I had some clients that I was looking on bringing on because we were going volume, volume, volume. And I just turned to her and I said, I don't want to go that path down the long term. I want to be the guy that goes deep with the people we have, and I
mm,
want to be able to say, I want to be able to have fewer clients, but yet we go in with them to a beautiful, powerful place. And, and that was but it's a shift. It's a mindset shift. And it came about from some mistakes I made and from some hard lessons that happened to me where I was doing too much. I wasn't feeling healthy. I wasn't having time for my daughter. And I was like, I need to make a change. And that was why I started my company. But then
yeah,
that same pull started to pull for there. And I had to go, the temptation was there. We're not doing that. We're going to do
yeah,
something different. But,
yeah.
what mistakes or hard lessons shaped your judgment as a leader and advisor?
Mistakes. Ooh, I think in the early days, I was uncomfortable being the leader, if I'm honest.
Mm,
I inherited it because it was my company. And so I went from being someone who worked in a business as a manager or whatever to suddenly, and imposter syndrome kicks in a bit, especially when you start
yeah.
to hire these really intelligent people and these really smart
Right?
people. Yeah, you think, well, who am I? And it took me a while until one of my most I would say he's a genius, actually, a creative guy, worked for me for many years. And he came to me and he said, um, people want to be led and you're the leader. So there's no one else. So then you realize actually you're doing people a disservice by not standing up there showing, and they want strong leadership. And strong leadership it's not just about saying this is where we want to go and everything else and sorting problems out when things go wrong. Like I say, it's investing in people. It's showing up. It's showing up. People want to see you as well. Like I got the business to a point a few years ago where I probably didn't need to come to work every day. Maybe I needed to come in for an hour or two a day. They didn't like that though. If I
Yeah.
didn't come to work for a few days, they're like, well, because you're the leader. So you
Yeah.
kind of have to show up. and be interested in what people are doing, even if you don't need to.
Yeah.
The other thing as well is dealing with people who don't fit the company.
Mm,
Didn't deal with it
right?
quick enough. Yeah. And some of them, you have to be really careful. You see what they want you to see. What you don't see is when you're out the room and what's going on and the dynamics of the team. And I give people too much rope. Um, and I remember seeing, I'm pretty harsh on it now. I remember seeing this box. You would have seen it. There's 4 squares. There's like cultural fit and performance. And it's always that top left one where they're fantastic performers, but they're toxic to everybody else. And they're the ones that think, well, we keep them because they're performing, but even though everybody else wants to leave, I reckon there should just be 2 boxes. I reckon there should just be performance, which includes cultural fit, and not, because they do so much damage to everything you've created. So I've got a very sensitive radar when it comes to team dynamics.
I'm with you. I had a cultural fit that was a massive underperformer that I recently had to let go of. And it was also really tough. Like, person
Yeah.
was super fun, super awesome to be around. Like, if I wanted to go hang out with one of the people as a buddy, that was the person. But the drop off was there, the quality drop was there. And I kid you not, I came in one day and the person was sleeping at their desk. And I was just like, after I had specifically that morning gone in and said, all right, we need to sit there and we need to figure. I said, this is how you do your job. Step 1, step 2, step 3. You got to do all these. I set them and left them with a task. I came back and they were asleep. And I was just like, I don't understand how, when you just had this like reprimand, how in any way, shape, or form you think this is the right response to this situation. And my wife, who I run the company with, was just like, yeah, you've been too kind and you don't want people to like be struggling. But she's like, it's not a fit. And if you keep that person, and I'm glad that I have a great significant other who was, a voice of reason. She's like, if you keep that person and other people see that underperformance, and that's the standard that you're setting, then you're going to be telling everyone it's okay if you slack. And so
Yeah.
we did a big reframe. We brought in someone who was just a new person right away, who was hustling, who was hungry, and the whole team saw this, and like, first of all, and also letting go of that employee that was underperforming sent a very clear message to the entire team. Like, everyone was like, oh, okay. And it's not easy though. Making those leadership decisions about when to part ways with someone is super hard.
It's one of the most stressful things I do.
Yeah. Right.
And people say you should hire slowly and fire quickly.
Yeah.
But most people get that the wrong way around, because they've hired quickly
Yes.
and then they're stuck with this issue, but they don't want to or not admit it, but have to deal with it. Maybe it'll get better, so they fire slowly, and it's hard, but it gets, as you found out afterwards, everybody comes to you and says, "Thank God you did that," and you were like, "Well, why didn't you tell me you felt that strongly?" Oh well,
Right?
yeah,
Right. I had one worker that came up to me and I was like, okay. So I talked to my team leads. I said, this is the decision that has happened. Just want to let you know what happened and why. And one of my team leads was like, well, I'm so glad you did that, because I saw her playing video games on the job. And I said, and why did you not tell me this? Like,
yeah,
what part of you said, hey, someone is
yeah,
playing video games? That's just
yeah.
going to be something I'm going to keep to myself. And I just was like, please say
Same
something.
thing.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you about one last topic real quick before we finish up. How has your definition of success evolved from earlier in your career to now?
Oh, very, very much. Earlier in my career, you're young, you're hungry,
Right.
you're building a reputation or a business, and you're you've got all the time in the world.
Yeah.
And I think as you get older, well, I don't think I know, as you get older, we're all running out of one scarce resource, which is time. And so
Yeah.
that becomes more and more valuable. I think we've talked about it. And look, I know people who are in their 50s who are running big multi-million dollar businesses, they're working 70 hours a week and they're telling everybody about their revenue, but they're making no money. They've got no quality of
Mhm.
life and they're unhealthy. I don't think going back to the uh, sort of putting busyness on a pedestal. We've got to get out of it.
Yeah.
So for me, as I've got older, it's been more about quality. In this
Yeah.
order, I want to spend quality time with my wife. I want my kids to want to spend time with me, and I want my employees to come to work. And
Yeah.
if I get that all right, I'm happy. And funnily enough, when I'm happy, the business is performing better anyway.
Yeah.
So it's about looking after yourself, I think, as well, is important. And success changes as you get older. Also, because I achieved a lot of that stuff that I thought was important earlier on anyway. So where do you go? You know,
Yeah.
I think as you get older, you figure out that, as I say, more isn't always better. Um, Buying expensive, shiny stuff doesn't make you happy.
Yeah.
Um, working with people who well, one of my legacies I would like to think with the business is that I brought a bunch of people together who enjoyed working with each other. And when they look back on their lives, they'll go, I spent 10 years or 15 years at this place and I really enjoyed it. And not a lot of people can say that.
Yeah. I love that. Well, it's something that I look at my daughter and other young generation, the younger generation, some of my team members, and I think about watching how some of my team leaders are leading and things. And I think that there's still a lot they need to learn, and there's a lot that needs to be that it's not getting taught. I had people that were doing learning study, like, what did you study in school? Management. And there's zero management principles were
No,
passed out.
no.
But one of the things that I think my team needs to learn, and truthfully, is better communication. Like my
Yeah,
team, I see my team leaders, and like I said with the video game, that would have been a great situation for her to redirect and say, "Hey, you know what? That's not a fit with our culture. It would have been great for you not to do that." And then
yeah,
also communicated to me. And so I think that one thing that I would work, and I will, not complain for too long, but one of my challenges is constantly also making sure that Slack channel, making sure that we're getting those responses, making sure that people are coming back in a timely fashion. Like, I find that my workers will do stuff, but they don't like to respond. They're like, ah,
yeah.
it's,
I'll make a point on that as well, which has changed as I've got older. I always use my dad as a bit of a coach because he was a bit of a legend as a businessman. And he's pretty hardcore. He's pretty old school. And
that's
whenever I
awesome.
phone him and I say to him, "Hey, like this has happened," or someone's done this," he will always say, "Well, that's your fault. What have you done about it? Or you
Right.
haven't done." And he's pretty
Right.
hard about it. And I'm like, now I don't even before I phone him, I instinctively think, "How did I screw that up?" Because I probably
Right.
did. Right? If you pointed at somebody, three fingers pointing back at you,
Yep.
everything is your responsibility and or your fault. Right? If you trace it back, if someone's not behaving properly at work, maybe you didn't set expectations. Maybe you didn't ping them when they hit the electric fence of where you've put the boundaries. Maybe you hired the wrong person. Maybe you haven't trained them well enough. There's
Yes.
always something you could have done better. And in your example of that person didn't come to you when they saw them playing video games, it's easy to go, well, they should have done that. But actually, I
I
don't
didn't
want
set the
that to
tone.
happen again.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I don't want that to happen again. So that's a selfish thing. So I think, what can I do to make sure that if that ever happens again, someone's going to come and tell me without turning everybody against each other? And that's the
100%.
challenge. And that's why you're always learning as a leader or a manager or whatever, because let's face it, there's always something going wrong. And so, you're always trying to plug the holes and fix it. But ultimately, life becomes, there's a burden, a weight lifted when you realize that actually it's everything comes back to you.
Yep. Jocko Willink has this great book called, I think it's called Radical Ownership. And he looks at that, he's like, at the end of the day, it all begins and ends with you as a leader, you know? With that girl that I had to let go of who was exceptional, that worker in her personality and all of this, but underperformed. One of the things when I did a breakdown analysis of what was it that caused this failure, there were two things that I found. One was a cultural misfit, and I think that was there from hiring. And the second that I think was even bigger was a mistake I made, that I hired one person for two roles. And when one of those roles was dramatically being underperformed, she kind of just gave up on it. And that was something that, as I tried to fix that and show her what that other role entailed, she didn't want to step into that. And that is why I had to part ways. But yet the thing is like, if I had have clearly defined and separated those two roles, I probably would have had more success, because if I had have hired her for the second role only, she'd probably still be here. And that's
Yeah.
my fault.
Yeah.
It all
Yeah. No
starts and
shame in
begins and ends with you,
that.
right? Right? But let me ask you this. If you could go back in time and give yourself one bit of advice, what advice would you give your younger self?
Ooh, that's a very good question. What advice would I give myself? Um, you've got more time than you think. Don't be. It's a hard one because I have uh, a quality that is also a big weakness, which is I move very quickly. I do things very quickly. I have a clock ticking in the back of my head that I got to get things done. And it means I get
Yeah,
things done quickly, but I also sometimes left with decisions that have consequences that if I'd have just taken my time and got some more perspective, um, I'd be in a different place. So I
yeah,
think to my younger self, it would be everything's going to be fine. Just take your time, and you'll probably end up in a in a similar place, but with less carnage behind you. So that's probably one piece of advice. And try, the other thing is we've all been through some crap over the past 6 or 7 years. We've all been through a mass resilience training exercise with COVID and everything else. So, it's I freaked out during COVID. I thought I was going to lose my business, and it turned out that it was okay. Things could be better, but it's okay. It's okay. It's going to be okay. And I think that's the advice you need to hear when you're younger, is that, you know, just trust the universe will look after you. If you do all the right things, you'll be fine.
yeah. I love that. That's the mic drop moment right there, man. Where can people find out more about you and what you do?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also at the agency. It's called the Business Marketing Group. You just and then a hyphen business.co.nz. My details are on there. Yeah, they're probably the two best places to find me in a professional way.